Hi everyone, David Aragona and Mike Beer here taking a look at a graded stakes event this weekend at Ellis Park. Some races previewing the Kentucky Downs meet, and the Grade 3 Pucker Up is probably a preview race for one of the high-pursed races they're going to run for the three-year-old fillies going along on the turf at Kentucky Downs. This one carded at the 9-furlong distance for the three-year-old fillies at Ellis Park. And Mike, we were just talking a little bit before we started recording. A highly competitive race, some interesting horses in here, but it's a tough one to decipher.
Yeah, it's just I thought it was just a really hard race, or at least for me to just land on anybody that I really liked in here. I guess that's maybe a good sign from a wagering perspective, David. I mean, it's a really well-matched field, and maybe this means a lot of different horses can win here. I have no problem with the favorite. I think that's the good starting off point. The Dino Doro, the 3 for Brad Cox. This horse has only run 3 times. I think she's run really well in all 3 of them. Maybe she's just better than these horses.
Yeah, when I was handicapping this race from an odds perspective, I sort of felt like the number 3, Destino Doro, and the number 10 here for a good time might be the 2 that separate themselves from others as the clear-cut favorites in this race, with probably Destino Doro being the shortest price of the 2. But it is a race where you can make cases for a lot of horses, so I won't be surprised when the money's a little bit spread around. Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector. And Mike, it does feel like the 2 horses drawn down towards the inside are probably the ones that will look to go forward in here. Liam in the Dust is a horse that has drawn inside a number of times in her career, and they typically look to be aggressive when they do so, but all of those races are on the dirt, so we'll see how that speed translates to the grass. And the number 2, Drop the Hammer, she's coming off a gate-to-wire victory, so you can't imagine they're going to take her speed away from her.
Yeah, I mean, both the wins so far for the 2 Drop the Hammer have come when she just went to the front and got loose on the lead. So I'd be surprised if they were going to try to raid her in here. We'll see what happens. But it does seem like the key to the pace is the horse on the rail. I mean, she's got to transfer her speed over to turf. But if she does, they're probably going.
And speaking of Liam in the Dust, let's begin our conversation of the contenders with her. Mike, I'll say that when I look at her pedigree, there's not a ton of turf on the dam side, so it's a little tough to make a case for her from that perspective. But I really do like the Liam's maps getting on the turf in general. He's got pretty good stats across the board, and you see a lot of them take the turf at a high level. And she is a horse, Liam in the Dust, ever since she began her career. When I first watched her replays, I just remember thinking, boy, she's got a big turf stride. She's got that suspension to her stride that you see from turf horses. And I know the pedigree is not screaming at turf at you, but I'm very intrigued to see her finally getting on the surface because I think it might really suit her. I'll just be interested to see what price she is because she's got that 84 buyer showing last time. And I wonder if she's really going to be 15 to 1.
Yeah, I wonder how they'll bet her too. I mean, it is interesting that they're making the surface, which finally, man, I hear what you're saying about, the way that she goes and obviously the way that she handles wet tracks could be a good sign for her too. Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't see enough pedigree for me to want to bet her, especially if they're going to make the surface switch in a graded stakes race. I don't know, man. I don't love it, but if she was some kind of big price, I could come back and take a second look.
The number 2, Drop the Hammer, is the other horse that's probably going to look to get some forward position in this race, as she did last time when she went right to the front end in an allowance race at Ellis Park and never looked back. That was a race that was kind of dominated on the front end by prices, and some favorites made runs at the end, but they could never really get close to her, Mike, as she just stayed on. And as you said, the 2 times that they put her in front and she hasn't really been contested for the lead, she's put forth these very nice efforts. Her other races make her a bit of a stretch in here, but she has had some trips along the way when she doesn't get forward. So you'd imagine they have to be aggressive this time.
Yeah, I would think that it'd be silly kind of to take her speed away from her now that we've seen her on turf 4 times anyway. I mean, she just seems like she's best that way. You mentioned, I guess the Keeneland race, I didn't love the trip that she got that day, so maybe that suggests that she can still run without the lead, but she was terrible at Pimlico 2 starts back without the lead. So I don't know, man. She was fine last time. I wonder what will happen if she doesn't get loose on the lead, because if nothing else, the 2 wins. Not only did she make the lead, but she made easy, uncontested leads in those races.
The number 3, Destino Doro, has to be considered the horse to beat purely based on what she did during her 2-year-old season. She was a visually impressive debut winner at Kentucky Downs and followed it up with a narrow defeat in the Jessamine in her second start. And like when I went back to watch the replay of that race, I still couldn't believe she didn't win because it seemed like she got the bob and went past those horses, but then they showed the slow-mo and she ended up finishing 3rd, which unfortunately kept her out of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf. I think she actually was entered in that race and scratched, and it took her a while to get back to the races afterwards. Did return for an allowance race at Churchill Downs last month, and she got the job done closing from way back, but she did get a pretty honest pace to close into in that race, and I'll be interested to see how quickly they go up front here because I do think that's key to the chances of a horse that just has no early speed.
Yeah, exactly. That's the real drawback for third. And listen, again, maybe down the line we'll just look back at this race and say, if she goes off at 3-1, why'd she go off at 3-1 against that field? Because she looked like she was better than them at two. And then she came back with a good race already. But you're right, David. I mean, she's shown zero speed in three starts. Probably will be last early in this race.
Yeah.
And it's certainly, if nothing else, it's a tougher spot than the last one. And the thing about the last race too, and I thought she looked good winning. She put in a big run through the stretch there. But as you point out, she had pace to come after, man. That field was all stretched out up the backstretch. And so it did set up well for her. But man, I like all three of her races so far.
The number 4, Princess Attitude, is a horse that's been knocking on the door at the stakes level. She was third in the Hilltop 2 back at Pimlico over a course that was probably a little bit worse than good. And then last time in the Tepin, she was beaten by a vastly improved Lush Lips. And I thought she got a pretty good trip in that race. Mike kind of tipped out in the stretch after saving ground on the turns, but she did finish well. She's a horse that does tend to put in a good account of herself, and she's just been steadily improving over the course of her career. And I think you're going to agree with me on this one. Based on pedigree, I've always wanted to see her go a little bit longer. So the 9 furlongs of this race, it might help her.
Yeah, I like them giving her more distance to work with here. We'll see how much improvement it can possibly lead to. But really I didn't like her Hilltop 2 starts back. But again, that was that Preakness weekend. That turf course was not good. It was something way softer than that. So maybe it's okay to be lenient there, because I thought she ran pretty poorly that day, but I liked her maiden win and I liked her effort in the Tepin last time. I thought she ran fine in that race. And now that I like that they're giving her more distance to work with, and I think there's a really good trip coming for her in here.
The number 5, Fixed to Be, is another horse that's been knocking on the door at the stakes level. She ran against horses like Theon and Classic Q, a couple of turf runners who have been in very good form in the 3-year-old filly division so far this year. And like, she was never really a factor in either of those races, the Regret or the Wild Applause. And especially last time, I wanted to see her do a little bit more running at the end, because there was at least an honest pace going on. She saved ground and she just had no kick whatsoever. So I wonder if her development has kind of hit a plateau at this point.
Yeah, we have the same feelings about her. I chased this horse a little bit early on in her career, because I just thought she had some trips that made her a little bit interesting. I'm kind of done trying to make her a stakes horse, at least for now. We'll see what happens down the line. But the last 2 races, and she did stumble pretty badly to start last time, but still recovered fine. There was pace in front of her. It seemed like she had an overall good trip, and she had a chance to run through the stretch, and she just didn't do it.
The number 6, Just Ruthless, is coming out of a 3rd place finish and an allowance optional claimer behind Arrival Admit that we'll get to in just a little bit. And Mike, she was getting back to the turf that day for the first time since her debut as a 2-year-old. And I think getting back on the turf has definitely helped this daughter of Justify. But that was a much softer spot than the one that she'll be competing in on Sunday. So I do think she's going to need another step forward.
Yeah, I agree. Ultimately, and she ran fine in that race. It's just not a race that I like. I don't like the race that the winner ran there. I don't like the race that this horse ran in there. Now they're going to step both of them up into a graded stakes race. Not for me.
The number 7, Delane, I think is pretty interesting, because she's been just going back and forth between different surfaces over her career, dirt and turf. And I like her best as a turf horse for sure. I mean, you go back to her allowance win at Tampa over the winter back in December. I mean, Mike, not often you see horses win turf races by nearly 10 lengths, but she just ran away from that field like she was in a completely different league from those horses. And I know it only got a 67 buyer, but you now go back in Formulator and look at that race. There are multiple horses in that field that came back in their very next starts and ran 15 to 20 buyer points faster. So that might have been a better race than it looked at the time. And then her next turf race was the Florida Oaks, where she ran into Nitrogen and Lush Lips, who are 2 of the best horses in the division. She's gone back to dirt since then, hasn't done a whole lot of running on that surface. But like I said, I think she's more of a turf horse, and she might not be fully exposed on this surface.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you that I think this might be her best surface. I mean, I guess it was maybe tough for the connections, because she's actually run well on all 3 surfaces. And so I guess they were just trying to figure it out. But I agree with you. I think she just might be best on turf. Like you, I really liked her turf win at Tampa back in December. I'd probably being too hard on her for the Florida Oaks too, because that field I think it was just way better than this one. I didn't think she ran that well in there. I thought she got a great trip and never was really involved in there. Sort of was a suck up third. But that field was way tougher than this one, David.
The number 8, Admit, is a horse who's always had plenty of turf pedigree. It took her a while to get on that surface, but they finally switched her over to the grass last time in an allowance race at Churchill Downs, and she responded well to the change, getting the job done. But Mike, look, we're talking about for Just Ruthless, who was the 3rd place finisher in that race, probably not the toughest allowance field, and she's going to be stepping up against much tougher here, and I still think she's got some things to prove at this level.
I do too. And listen, maybe she will move forward again. Maybe this is the surface she's been waiting for, and she did improve last time, and maybe she'll improve again. I just didn't really like that race. I didn't think there was anything special about her performance there. She did eventually get the job done, but she worked really, really hard for it against weaker horses. And now they're going to move her up in class here. And the other thing is, David, she's 7-2 on the morning line. I mean, it's just not a price I would ever take on her.
Yeah, I'll be kind of surprised if she is that short, but if she
Yeah.
gets bet that way, she's not a horse that I really want any part of. The number 9, No Sleep Till Brooklyn, a horse that I know our producer Bobby's excited about, and Bobby's been doing a great job this week with our busy schedule on the Whitney week at Saratoga, and we'll take a look at the last replay of No Sleep Till Brooklyn. And Mike, she got the job done, but I thought got a very good trip to earn this victory at Horseshoe Indianapolis. She was running down a horse that I think was 75-1 setting the pace this day, so not exactly sure what was behind her, and this is going to be a big step up.
Yeah, just I guess I would call her a wild card maybe because she is, a well-connected horse for a really good trainer. She does ultimately, win that race pretty easily, but it's not like she blew that field away. And it just feels like this is going to be way, way tougher than that.
The number 10 here for a good time has faced some pretty good competition lately, especially in that most recent start where she was third in the Regret behind Fian and Totally Justified. And of course, the winner of that race came right back to upset the division leader Nitrogen in the Belmont Oaks, I should say, back on 4th of July weekend. And Mike, here for a good time, watching that race back, never looked like she was going to get to the top 2 or really past them, but she did hang in against some really tough horses. And she is picking up Tyler Gaffalione for this race, who's been pretty dominant since coming back from injury at Ellis Park. So I think she merits some respect.
I do too. Listen, maybe this is just a better spot for her. She's another one where I just, I see her 3 turf races. I think she's run okay in them. It doesn't make me feel like she's some kind of superstar, but she ran fine last time against a tougher field than this one. And maybe she's just finds herself in the right field this time.
Let's go to picks for the grade 3 pucker up at Ellis Park on Sunday. And Mike, I'm going to go with the number 7 Delane, a horse that I just think has not been fully exposed yet on the turf. And I hear you about her getting a good trip in the Florida Oaks, but like you were alluding to, I just think that was a really tough field. And, any progression from that performance, which I think she could find in months since then, is going to make her a major player in this race at what could be a fair price. And I do want a little bit of Liam in the Dust getting on the turf for the first time, 7-1-3-4 for me, but you're going for the number 4, Princess Attitude.
Yeah, I like the way that you laid out the race, actually. I'm way more interested in your take on it than mine because I just couldn't find anybody that interested. And I think you did find 2 really interesting horses at prices. I'm going to take Princess Attitude. Hope she gets the trip that I project that she can get in here because she's got really good tactical speed. I just see her getting the right trip, getting a little more distance to work with, and maybe it all conspires to her taking a little bit of a step forward here.
I've got the 7 on top. 4, 3, 2, 10 are Mike's picks in the grade 3 pucker up on Sunday at Ellis Park. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.